What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, back with some more exciting information following the Overwatch 2 PvP livestream, and in this video I want to cover some new information we just got from a recent Overwatch developer AMA, which myself and several other content creators had the honor to be able to take part in. I will note that this AMA is separate from the upcoming Reddit AMA, which is supposed to be taking place on May 24th. However, in this early access AMA, I guess you could call it, the devs shared some very interesting information regarding the new 5v5 format Overwatch 2 is going to have, along with further insight into tank and other hero changes, which will be coming with the sequel, in addition to some comments regarding tournament systems, competitive rewards in Overwatch 2, and Pride content, amongst many other topics. But before I jump into this video, I just want to remind you real quick to subscribe and hit up that bell icon so you never miss out on any of my future Overwatch and Overwatch 2 news and content. But now let's dive right on into some of this new information. Real quick, before I actually touch on the questions and answers from this developer AMA, there was one other interesting reveal which was actually made on the official Play Overwatch website yesterday, which I had overlooked when doing my previous video, which is that Bastion is supposedly confirmed to be undergoing some form of review and possibly will even be getting a rework in Overwatch 2. In this paragraph here from the post on the official Overwatch website, they specifically mention that other heroes, like Bastion, are being reviewed and reworked from the ground up, which will result in major changes to how the hero plays. Now, Bastion undergoing some sort of rework or changes was actually something I mentioned during my recap of the live stream I posted yesterday, since like Orisa, who we know is going to be undergoing some sort of significant changes, Bastion was completely absent from any of the gameplay footage shown off during the live stream. And while we could fairly assume that that might be because he's undergoing some sort of changes, now we seem to have outright information stating that, yes, Bastion will in fact be undergoing some sort of rework. Now, I'm not really going to delve into what this rework could potentially end up being in this video. I know there have been tons of suggestions over the years on how to rework Bastion, but I just wanted to point out that we do have the information now that Bastion will be undergoing some significant changes. But now that I've talked about Bastion, let's move on to the Overwatch developer AMA. There were a ton of questions asked during this AMA, far too many for me to realistically cover in just this video, so I'm going to focus specifically on talking about the big exciting things announced during this AMA. And to start, I'll just share the two questions I was able to ask, both of which were answered by Jeff Goodman. So my first question, with Overwatch 2 featuring only one tank hero per team instead of two, is there concern that this new format will place tremendous pressure on the solo tank player during the match, and potentially make the role even less appealing to play than it is currently? Jeff responded by saying, yes, for sure that's a concern. The hope is that the new power level and flexibility of tanks, and the gameplay changes that will allow them to be more aggressive, do more damage, etc., will offset this. It's certainly something we've talked a lot about though. This I find fairly reassuring to hear, as certainly one of my big concerns with the 5v5 format is that it's going to be very, very stressful for the solo tank player on each team. And this is something I'll probably talk more about in a follow-up video where I go more in depth with my thoughts about the 5v5 format and how I think that's going to play out. But I was glad to hear that the devs are being considerate at the very least about the potential stress of being a solo tank player. The next question I asked was in reference to barriers. Are barriers and their prominence within the tank role in the game overall being re-evaluated for Overwatch 2, given that there will now only be one tank per team? Jeff responded, yes, that's one of the main wins from moving to one tank, though this does not mean that Ryan's shield is going to be stronger to compensate for not having another tank. In fact, it's quite the opposite. We're pushing the tank role away from barriers being too dominant and trying to allow tanks to get into the mix more, dealing damage, etc. This also means that everyone in the game is going to be seeing/shooting barriers a lot less overall. Now this I think is a pretty interesting answer because, as I mentioned before, we know Orisa is going to be reworked to some extent in Overwatch 2, and given that Sigma, like Bastion and Orisa, was also absent from the gameplay footage of the recent livestream, it's fair to assume that Sigma as well is going to be reworked to some extent. So I have to wonder, what's going to happen to Orisa and Sigma's barriers? Orisa, I don't think they're going to remove her barrier outright. I feel like she's probably still going to have a barrier in some form, no matter what they do to her. But when it comes to Sigma, I wouldn't be surprised if they took away his barrier entirely. Again, just speculation based on the information we have here. We don't know for sure that's going to end up happening to him, but it is interesting to hear Jeff note that barriers are definitely something they're trying to move away from in terms of their prominence in the game and how often they're, well, tied to tank heroes. But moving on now to some of the other answers provided by the devs during this AMA, it was also revealed that a scoreboard and stats overhaul is in the works for Overwatch 2, and is going to be part of the core system changes they make with the sequel. There's going to be some sort of revamping of the daily reward and progression systems in Overwatch, but they don't have any details to provide currently, outside of the fact that their goal is less to make the systems focused more on player retention, but rather more to make competitive systems more fun and helpful for players who want to try and improve their Overwatch skills. It was clarified that the green overhealth we saw in the recent livestream is in fact going to be the condensation of all forms of overhealing which exist currently. So for example, we so far have armor and shields as possible overhealing, and all that's going to be condensed down into just overhealth. When it comes to heroes like Brigitte, who grant bonus healing armor, that was specifically mentioned as being changed to just bonus overhealing, which in turn would make Brigitte weaker, and thus is likely something that's going to have to be rebalanced as part of her kit. Additionally, Wrecking Ball, who has the passive ability where his overhealing doesn't grant ult charge, is another thing which might be changed or taken into consideration, specifically regarding the fact that tank heroes in general in Overwatch 2 are going to provide less ultimate charge for people dealing damage to them. Another question, which I found particularly interesting, was one asking whether the change from 6v6 to 5v5 offered more freedom in terms of designing new hero abilities and concepts, to which Jeff Goodman replied that it absolutely impacts their freedom to design tank heroes, as they can focus more on letting tanks do different things by allowing them to focus more on damage or being able to dive into groups of enemies, instead of strictly focusing around holding a barrier and functioning essentially as a shield behind which the rest of the team has to stand. He unfortunately didn't give any teasers for potential new tank heroes we could end up seeing, but it is interesting and nice to hear him say that going forward, there is more freedom for them when it comes to designing different tank heroes, and hopefully we're going to see that play out with some very interesting new heroes later down the line. Another question was regarding whether 5v5 could ever be tested out on the Overwatch 1 experimental card, but evidently it's unlikely for us to see this happen simply due to how many hero balance changes it would require in order to make the 5v5 work, and that if they were to ever make it a public test for people to try out the new 5v5 format, it would be outside of the experimental card, which I interpret as potentially meaning that if they were to do something like this, they would basically have to set up a separate PTR, so to say, for some sort of demo or beta testing, which I think we can expect to see at some point in the future, but probably isn't going to be something we see anytime soon, unfortunately. Another question was regarding in-game tournament systems, which are apparently something the dev team would like to add in, but aren't a top priority for them currently, and thus are something that's more on the back burner, and shouldn't be something we should get our hopes up for in the near future. Flex Queue and Priority Pass are systems which are likely to carry over into Overwatch 2, as they in general just help improve queue times. The dev team is supposedly committed to communicating more about Overwatch 2 over the course of 2021, but can't make any promises when it comes to how frequently they put out updates like the live stream we just got. It's unlikely that there will be any more or new competitive rewards along the lines of golden weapons when it comes to Overwatch 2, as the dev team sees them as being fairly unnecessary and thus aren't something worth adding in, as it potentially corrupts the reasons why players are interested in playing competitive modes. And there is evidently LGBTQ+ pride content coming at some point in the future, but they don't have any details to share regarding when or what exactly this is. As a little side note, I just want to point out, I will say that June, which is Pride Month, is coming up very soon, and the anniversary event only runs for the first half of June, so I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing some sort of Pride-focused mini-event taking place in the latter half of the month. Again, just speculation on my part, but it seems like something we could easily end up seeing. Beyond these answers I mentioned specifically here in this video, there were a number of other questions going into more technical and nuanced aspects of Overwatch 2, but the ones I read through were the ones which stuck out to me as being the most substantial in terms of the new information they provide to us or the indication of new content coming in the future. Overall, there weren't any major new reveals, like of course they didn't mention a new hero or anything along those lines, but it was very nice to have this direct conversation with some of the developers and get a bit more information regarding the things they've already talked about, as well as a bit more information about things coming in the future. But that does it for this news update video. Thank you all so much for watching. Definitely let me know your thoughts on any of the things I covered from the AMA or Bastion being reworked. I'm definitely interested to hear what you guys think about that. So be sure to drop a comment down below. And otherwise, be sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, hit up that bell icon, and come join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any of my future Overwatch content. Special thanks to my YouTube channel members who help make these videos possible, and if you'd like to join them to earn some cool rewards, then just hit that join button down below. Otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, have a great day.